Wait, I think it's...
We can see your screen, Nilabh.
Yeah, I know, but I will flip the screen, right? I mean, yeah. You can see the screen now? Is it okay now?
Yes, much better. Super.
Okay. So let's start. Geeta put me on a tight spot with a topic which is close to my heart, but not something which I have been personally involved with for let's say the tallest building in our office wasn't done by us, but since it's in from my office, I could have been part of the discussions which is happening there, and so let me share with you my personal experiences with high rise. Let's say, like Geeta said, I joined SPA in 1986, and SPA being in Delhi, we frankly had no experience or no exposure to high rise. Before that, my childhood was in Calcutta, and the only tall building we saw there was the Tata Center. And so in about, I think 86, 87, I had an opportunity to come to Bombay. And that's the first time that I saw a high-rise building. And this was one of the tallest buildings, and it has been the tallest building in Bombay for quite some time. And actually, I was quite excited as to see a very tall building, and I went up the building. So I went there, I got into the lifts and got up to the terrace, walked up to the top, and walked up to the top of this parapet. And there's a small staircase and this thing, and then you walked up on top of it. And of course, the view was fantastic, and that kind of picked my brains as to how I can start this whole journey about high-rise. And then subsequently, after having worked a couple of years, put up a little bit of savings, I said, this is the time to explore the world. So then I went, and my first trip was to Hong Kong. And can you imagine, after having 3 years of practice of joining at Hafeez Contractor, I could have experienced some of the largest and tallest buildings in the world. I got to see the Bank of China, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, and many other buildings at that time. And subsequently, over the further trips, one could see the financial center, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, Petronas Towers. And then subsequently, the same trip, I had gone to Japan. And there, for the first time, I traveled on this Yokohama Tower, which you see on the second left, which at 12 meters per second, one of the fastest lifts in the world at that time. And then subsequently, over about a decade ago, when Marina, Singapore visit, I could actually go up this building at under construction and see how this cantilever structure was being built. And one of my most memorable experiences has been visiting the Jinmao Tower. At that time, none of the other two towers were ready, and this was the tallest building in Shanghai at that time. And what fascinated me was the fact that the first half of the building was an office building, and the second half of the building was an atrium hotel, the Grand Hyatt. And I must tell all the young people here in the audience today that some of these buildings which you see here, whether it's the tallest building right now, the Shanghai Tower, or for that matter, the Gunzhou Tower on the right, these are some of the buildings you must study in detail, and there is sufficient data available on the net to see how these buildings were built. When Jinmao was built, probably parametric wasn't such a thing, but Shanghai Tower is completely a parametric design, which Samit spoke about some time back. Then this is Europe. Europe has a different approach to the way the high-rise is, the way it meets the ground, the way it interacts with the city, and the way it is connected to the mass transit system. The latest building has been the one on the right, the Shard, which for its size, for a 1 million square feet, it has only 47 car parks, which is something which we must learn, that whenever we build high-rise and we build high-density buildings, we must connect it with a large infrastructure project. Then about 15 years ago, I had visited US, and then I saw some of those iconic buildings. At that time, World Trade Center was still there. However, I couldn't afford the money to get on top And I think at that time also it cost about $25 or $40, $50, and I still couldn't afford it, being just 4 or 5 years into practice. There are some of the contextual buildings like the Hearst Tower, like the Hancock Tower in Boston, which have created their own context and own identity there. And very recently, last year, I was at the Center for Tall Building and Urban Habitat Conference in Chicago. And this particular building is something which I think kind of summarizes what tall buildings are all about. They built this building next to a railway track where you can see these tracks happen here. And next to that is the river, Chicago River here. They built this building, they had this piling done, they took this core up, and then the dead loads of the buildings came down this column into the thing. And the entire lateral thrust of this building was taken by the core only. Unlike what we do here, where the core and the perimeter both have a function in the structure of the building. And this is something, and second most important thing which I liked about this is the fact that the ground floor space of a building, of any tall building when you go abroad, is the fact that the way it interacts with the city. They ensure that it is transparent, and they ensure that it talks to the city, and they allow the public through the building. The private space starts at the end of at the elevators only. What have been the learnings? Having seen almost visited 65 cities in the last 20-25 years that I have been traveling, that one must dream and it will happen. There is nothing which you can't do. You can build escalators at the 40th floor, you can build escalators at the 70th floor, you can build atriums on the 20th floor or on the 40th floor, things like that. But you must and always respect the neighborhood, but you can create your own context. You must and always have an attention to detail. You must have a clear circulation and segregation. And you should always create an awe and wonder. Spatial volumes are very important at public spaces. The height, the volume, the space, the width is very, very critical. Impeccable finishes is something which I've learned over all the time that we have built and we have seen. There is other thing which we must always remember is to create a robust program. It doesn't always have to be an office building. It doesn't always have to be a residential building. There has to be an element wherein you must be able to program the building in such a way that it stays in the long term. So what are the key points for high-rise? The most important is the purpose and context. What is it that you're building it for? Then there is geometry and proportion, because after all, any high-rise requires structure and it requires it to be stable and do the purpose it's meant for. Efficiency is very important because costs and construction is very, very important. You must understand that we have a fair amount of developer clients, and for them, what you make and what you sell is very, very important. And for that, efficiency of what you build, the planning, the area ratios, the layouts, the gardens, the footprint, and the efficiency of the individual layout itself, of the floor plan, of the, let's say, the flat layout or the office layout, everything is very, very important. Structure is the critical part. The soil conditions, the wind forces, seismic loads, the slenderness ratio. For wind and everything else, of course, the taller the building, we have to go for wind tunnel analysis, which is done for most of our tall buildings. Important things are base of the building, the entrance, the podium, the landscape. This is something which is critical and is a part of all buildings, because podiums do come in Bombay because of the parking norms and the space limitations. The top of the building, the terrace, is an important aspect. The pinnacle of the building is a very important aspect because that's what is seen from the distance. And the terrace is something which is used both for services and could be used for public space as well. Facade and lighting. Most important thing, where the look and feel of the building comes from there. The permanency of the finish and the robustness of the facade itself for the wind is critical. Lighting has been a slightly ignored subject, I must say, but it has to be something which we must give more attention to it. Hong Kong has done a great job of it. They have a lighting master plan for the city. I believe Azerbaijan also has something like that. So something which you must consider. It has come into, we have lighting consultants now who are doing a good job of it. And it's something which must keep in mind. Then the other aspects are vertical transportation, parking efficiency, services maintenance and fire strategy, local laws and codes and approvals. This is a very critical element of the design. Different cities of the country have different laws, but they all come together with one national building code, and the very recent national building code, which has kind of changed the way we think about buildings. Budget. When you're going for a high-rise building, there is a certain budget which is allotted for it because the client or the person wanting to it has always been keen, and it is slightly more expensive than the regular one. So budget is always there, but it's always critical. Time duration. This is something which over the years, I found that nobody anticipates the amount of time it takes. And the time it generally takes from the planning, from approval, from selling, from construction is sometimes takes its toll on the building itself and on the final product. Construction, there is always a space limitation in Bombay, or the material, labor, and of course there's the idea of benchmarking samples and sample apartments and everything else which comes into that. And which is the scariest part of this whole high-rise building is the change. The change of brief, sometimes ownerships change, budgets change, consultants change, laws change. And something which we have to deal with it every day, and we have to react to it as we go along. Now let me share with you some of the projects which and we'll discuss some of these points which I have said so. There has been in the world, always there has been a race for the tallest. This man's endeavor to go higher and higher. And we, as one of the leading architecture firms in the country, are not far behind. We have also dreamt and we have built. Started with Tower of Babel. Then we had the more iconic Empire State Building. Then we had the Sears Towers, the Petronas Towers, the Taipei Tower, and finally the Burj. So this has been how, and now I believe there are further more towers which are coming up, which are taller than this. Calatrava is building one which is taller than this. There's one more happening in Saudi which is taller than this. And there are equally tall buildings, which are already been planned in 2019, and it's, I believe, coming up in 2021 as well. So in our journey for tall, we built the Imperial 1 and 2, which is 255 meters. Then we built the 23 Marina at Dubai, which is 400 meters. And then we were also planning the India Tower, which is 515 meters in Chowpatty area. But the work started, they dug below. They had a 9-meter raft already dug and coming up. And then of course the project stopped because of the recession and everything else. But meanwhile, while we were planning this, we had an opportunity from the government of Uttar Pradesh, where Mayawati asked us to plan the tallest building in Noida. So they gave us a plot in Sector 32, Noida. And this was one of our schemes which quickly we came up with. The idea was called Everest Tower at that time. The idea was to have one of the tallest, of course. At that time, we were trying to beat the Burj, which was at 560 meters. So we designed this building at 710 meters height. And we created a Mall of India below that, over 32 acres of site. And had this site which had all sorts of, we had office buildings, residential, hotels, and mixed use on the top, super apartments and everything else. So this was one of those quick exercises which to pamper the ego of the state at that time. So we now come down to what we have actually built. The 23 Marina at Dubai. This, for a short period of time, for a year or so, was one of the tallest buildings, residential building in the world, being the pure residential building. Then I think, of course, we got backed by an adjoining neighbor who at Dubai itself, and then subsequently in other parts of the world. This, while it lasted, also came in the I Love Dubai official postcards of Dubai Tourism, because at that point of time, it was the tallest residential building in the world. This building is part of the Marina complex, which is a kind of a mixed use complex where they have towers along the artificial marina that they have created. And our site was on the rightmost corner, facing the Palm Jumeirah and things like that. This was the site, this was the view when we first came into the site. And these are some of the first sketches that Hafeez drew. He loves to draw on newspaper simply because some of those ideas do come on the plane when it's the quietest. And then it gets followed up by sketches once he is in office and discussions with the clients and that passionate person. And then we had, this was for the first time that we were building higher than 60, 70 floors. So we had international consultants, Mr. Joe Colasso, who came in from Texas, and he advised us on the way the structure was to be done, the way the structure behaved in this, in a tall building like this. And then there were the local laws of Dubai, which required a certain amount of parking. The zoning criteria were there, which defined that the building had to build right till the edge of the plot, because there is a parking bay at the back. That's how the whole structure of Marina is a defined, urban design defined complex space. So let's run through the floor plans of this building. This building is divided primarily into 3 zones with 2 service floors, and which of course have the outriggers also with that. It's got the first 8th up to 8th floor podium is all the public space. So you've got the club, you've got the entrance lobby, you've got the services, you've got the parking. All of that happened till the first 8 floors. And subsequently, we have a large triple height public club space above the podium. And then we have 3 zones that I spoke about. One is which has got 6 flats of floor at the 1st to 8th to 31st. Then we have 35th to 58th floor, which is 4 flats of floor at that point of time. And then they have some terraces coming in. And then on the top, we have the apartment duplex, which have got their own individual private lifts with corner decks. It is a double height lobbies in every duplex apartment and like that. So overall, about 350 apartments. We have, this is the entrance lobby level. This is the pool level at the podium top. Hold on a minute, there's a slight change in the. In the Bombay Dyeing Mills, wherein we have, it's like a mixed use development, which has got 3 towers of residential, 1 tower of office, 1 tower of hotel, and all thing is combined with a ground level retail happening down below. Yeah. So what I was trying to explain was that when this planning was happening, some of the critical parts that I wanted to share with all of you was the fact that given the same footprint area of a building, which is let's say given requirement which the client had for the certain types of apartments, whether you wanted the proportion of 3 bedrooms, the 4 bedrooms, the 2 bedrooms, and things like that. One could initially we had come up with plans which are linear shapes, which gave us a much better elevation and shape and form. But then when it comes down to efficiency of floor plate to core area, efficiency of parking, efficiency of the structure itself, then we realize that a square building, a geometrically straight square building is the best option in terms of structural efficiency. And it, of course, because of the way the geometry is run, we could definitely bring down that consumption of steel. The slenderness ratios of the building improved considerably, and because of which the efficiency of the structure improved, and we could definitely make the building in a much more economical way. The next I want to show you is the Imperial 1 and 2, which of course again became the tallest building in India for quite some time. And now we have higher buildings up and in Bombay itself and in Calcutta also. This I will explain to you in a different manner, in the sense that this also served a larger social issue, which is the slum rehabilitation, and which is an important aspect because in Bombay we have more than 40% of persons living in slums. I guess probably more. I really don't have the real figures, but this particular project, long time in the making. We first, it took us quite some time. First, when we were at the site, it was full of slums. It has got, this part of the project has got hills, is on the hill slope. This part of the project is on the almost flattish ground, and the entire thing from here all the way till the up was completely full of slums. So this way I can find that the high rise itself has an ability to kind of overcome a social, or let's say a crowding issue of the slums itself. So what we did was we part by part, over, I think it took about 8 or 10 years, 8 years I think, to kind of clear the slums, rehouse everybody in the apartments below. These are all about 10, 12 stories high. And then we had space cleared for the towers to come up. The towers itself is about 9 floors of parking, and then there are 62 levels of residential apartments on the top. This has also got about 6 flats of floor, and on the top it becomes a duplex, and then on the topmost floor is a triplex by the owners. So we got set of 8 lifts, 2 zones running. I think the speed of the lift was 4 meters per second. So this is what I was explaining to you. This is how it was when it first came in, 2,500 slum units, all across and going all the way up the hill. And over a period of time, we made the rehab buildings, and then we started the towers. The other thing you must understand about these towers is that this required that a fire tender has to go up right up till the top of the 9 floors podium. So then you had to have a kind of a double height driveway which went all the way here, then it came up, then again a double height driveway which went all the way up. And then so at any given point of time, you had a 6-meter driveway going right till the top of the podium. This is how it was. And we built the first set of buildings, then we started the tower at the same time. And then we built these 2 towers on the top. So you can see this, there is slum rehabilitation buildings here. You can see the podium, 9 floors of podium here. And then you have this towers coming on the top. This is the Ambani residence. Here the external cladding here we have used is aluminum composite panels, and we had, of course, initial challenges. The wind forces were quite high. Both the building as well as the curtain wall was tested under wind tunnel testing done, and we realized that this building, considering this geometry and everything else, had a very high performance requirements for this thing. This was done by a Swiss company, Schmidlin, at that time. The railings had to be designed for that kind of a wind force. Railing heights had to be decided based on the wind which was available. And so were the sliding window systems and everything else that came along with it. This is one of the other examples I wanted to show you. One of the first projects of Hafeez in 1988-89. I think it was just completed when I joined him in 91. And this is what I think created, is where a high-rise building creates its own landmark and gives an identity to a place. Powai area was itself almost unknown. It was so far north in the Bombay that hardly anybody wanted to go there. Only thing it was known for was IIT Bombay, and these developers wanted to kind of create an identity by which the rest of the 200 acres that they had to have a context to it. So Hafeez came in and he built this Lake Castle towers, which kind of mimics the hill which was at the back, and he created these two large openings, which became then the talk of the town, and the height of the building as well as its location created its own thing. And subsequently, over the last 15 years, we've built the entire township of 200 acres, a lot of them high-rise, and a lot of them in the same classical style that we adopted subsequent to Lake Castle being built in the modern style. One more example of how a high-rise building could create its own context. Gateway Tower was the only tower at that point in Gurgaon. In this case also, the developer DLF wanted to create an iconic building and create a gateway to this entire 500 acres of city that they had. That was phase 3, DLF phase 3 was built first, phase 4, phase 5. And now, of course, after having built the golf course and the golf course road and the Hyper City, everybody kind of knows this. But at that point of time, this one tower could bring in people. The idea was that you have to somehow attract the office people from Connaught Place into Gurgaon. You have to attract South Delhi residents and people to come to Gurgaon to come and stay. So on this highway, this building created that buzz around the place. I'll show you a more recent project of ours, which is Lodha Venezia. 50 floors, 24 meters, 6 levels of podium, 24 meter side podium, and then 50 levels of residential building. This is by Lodha developers and has a slenderness ratio of 1:8.5. And now as you can see that initially when we did plan a fair amount of terracing and pools at that point as a part of our concept. But ultimately when it got built, it became a straight top to down building. Subsequently, after their own market surveys and the fact that it had to be built in a quick, fast time because they had committed a short delivery time. And so they used the best techniques to make that happen. The site has a large, you can see this large podium, 2 towers, and the space within that is been all landscape design. The whole idea of Venezia was that you had a whole lot of pools. I think they've got about 10, 12 pools here, and a large water body, and the entire landscape was based out of water, which is currently partly executed because one of the towers is up and the second tower is up and running right now. In 4 flats of floor, 4 lifts, 4 meters per second. This is second building. This is Windsor Residences we built in Andheri. the typology which I wanted to show you and things which changes and which are the highs and the lows that we speak about in high rise is the one on the right is the image that we had originally imagined. The one on the left is the building which got built. The laws changed, and so you couldn't at that point of time in Bombay build the additional elevation features above the terrace level. I think that restriction came to about 6 meters above the last habitable floor. So that went off. And then second thing which, and here also you can see the second aspect, especially for people outside Bombay, is the fact that we have 3 levels of car parking. And then we always make sure that we have a triple height lobby, and we have a triple height lobby at the level at which you come out into the main garden. So lobby heights are something which has been always been our hallmark, or something which you must make sure, because that's what gives you the first impression, both at the time when you're entering the building and when you're exiting the building. This is a triple height lobby. This project I was trying to show you is because this building was originally conceived as an office building. And then subsequently, the clients were keen on the office building market wasn't so good. So we had to convert this building into a residential building. And so considering the same, I think the building had come up to about 1/3 the height, and then subsequently it was completed with residential floors. That created large gardens at the terrace level of the parking floors. This has got a mechanical car lifts system. This was one of the completion entries that we entered for a project in Baikala. This is a project which is undergoing right now at Sivri, very close to the Bombay Port Trust. It has got excellent views to the eastern waterfront. And this is also one of the slum rehabilitation schemes where you can see those rehabilitation buildings at the back, and the sail towers will come up in the front. 9 levels of parking and 52 levels subsequently after this. Again, the structure, you must see that there is a strong core, there are perimeter columns, and then you will have outriggers at every 3 levels, which will connect the inner core to the outer skin for making this. And then subsequently on the upper levels, we created the duplex on the one side of the tower. And then subsequently really on the top, there was a couple of triplex as well. This is also a project which is kind of currently on hold, but very much going through this process of approvals and this thing. It starts off again like a 6 flats a floor, then goes on to become 4 flats, then becomes a duplex, then becomes a triplex. This project is almost nearing completion. This is next to the race course in Bombay. It also, this is where I can say that the time duration is where it has one of the greatest challenges that this project has had was the time duration. This is also a slum redevelopment project. After a builder has already built and spent money on the slum redevelopment, starts off on making the tower, and then the sales kind of diminish and the laws change. So what happened was that till this level, till kind of, I think the 30th level, I think it followed the old plan, and then the laws changed wherein they didn't allow this decks on the outside to be free of FSI, and all had to be enclosed. Everything with the decks and all that which used to get free of FSI were not there anymore. So one had to include that into the building and then change the building floor plan subsequent to that on the top. So you can see the building which is curved down below and it's become straight on the top. This is something which is a reality here in Bombay. We had to face a fair amount of this change of laws in the last 4 years that has caused its own disruption, and we had to react fast to ensure that the project doesn't stall, neither the developer faces any issues on that. This is a project in Calcutta, the 42. It's facing the Maidan. Those of you in Calcutta are familiar with it. This was the original concept that we built. It's got 1 flat a floor. This this was having a slightly different structural system. They had the outriggers, but they also had to have a concept called belt wall, which means that besides the outrigger, which connects the core to the outer perimeter column, there is a shear wall kind of a concept which envelops the outer column at two locations, which kind of reinforces the whole building because of its slenderness factor. This is one of the high-end apartments, one flat a floor. Here, unlike other buildings, the thing was that the building started right from the ground level. I'll just go back here. This building starts right from the ground level. Unlike other buildings where you had a podium up to say 6 levels or 9 levels in different cases, here the building starts right from the ground level, and the parking and every other requirement is made in an adjacent building. So you got this parking building and a club on top of it, and this building starts from the ground floor itself. Like all our other buildings, this has got an entrance lobby of 10 meters high, and then we have a service floor, and then the project and the apartments start after that. This is one of the examples which we are doing in building which we are doing in Noida, where we have used the terrace garden, connected it on the top, and one of the tight sites where we hardly had any ground space at all, because this was part of a larger complex, and this developer had purchased this strip of land from another developer and wanted to build an iconic building here. So we made this. These are all 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom apartments, which we connected on the top and at mid-level, which has got some of the duplex happening here. And then on the top, we have this entire terrace gardens, which we have planned. This is the second project that we're building for this developer. We already built one already for him called Megdutam, which is this one, which is one of those first, let's say, the buildings in Noida or North India, where we created a nice 10-meter high stilts, so that the entire ground space was completely free from any flats or anything except entrance lobby. Only one ground floor flat was kept here on this corner, which was a particular requirement of a very specific friend of theirs, and he was willing to pay a good price for this, having a corner for himself. Except that rest of the area is completely free. So you can imagine, for a small site with a 9-meter high stilt, you could in fact have this entire ground to yourself. In the same building, we also created the top floor, connected all the towers on the top, and connected and made a infinity pool. You can see this view and the entire city from there. And then we created a small kids pool at the lower level. So this is like a 2-level clubhouse on the top of the building. Similar ideas have been explored at another project in Bombay. This is not ours, but they have where this architect has created a mid-level on the 23rd level or something. He has created a sky deck for people to come up. When you're coming up and down a 50-floor building, I think this kind of an architecture or a relief at the middle I think it's a great idea. Again, I'll show you another example of how a high-rise building manages to overcome the constraints of a site and the requirement. This is Buckley Court. This is in Kolkata. This was built on top of an heritage building. Heritage laws are quite strong in Bombay, and you are not, and as much as possible, you're not allowed to touch the existing building. You have to renovate it. And that's what we did. We renovated the existing building. We created columns, and we had a transfer girder much above the building, created an entrance lobby on the top, and then created a duplex, a building which is a high-end duplex flats which were there. So each flat is a duplex, and like in another case, we have a large entrance lobby which is mimicking or has respecting the old heritage of the project itself. This is one of the first office buildings that we built, I think in early 90s. At that time, this was also one of the tallest office buildings at that point of time. And the brief of this, you can see we had a nice triple height lobby, Then we had a tenant space which was to be leased out, and there was the owner space. This was a building for Thappers, and they wanted their own office with a distinction on the top. So we created 3 levels and zones: one public space here, one public space here, and a private office for themselves, and a leasable office entities which are here. And then subsequently, we also built this building for Birla, which finished about, I think, 6 years ago. And we've done some of the interiors here for Siemens, is a large tenant in this building. But you can see that as a time, what was in 90s the tallest building is nothing compared to what is happening. The next door to it is this Ritz-Carlton coming up to it. You can imagine the scale at which what was high rise in 90s is no longer, it's like a low rise in the 2020s. So that's the kind of scale and differences which has come about today. And now the 50-story has become almost the norm. And so having gone through some of our office projects, I thought I will come back to what the global trends are. And a lot of you must have seen what is happening around the world, but let me just share with you what I think is some of those challenges which we must all address together. Now this is the new age of the super tall, where all these buildings that you have seen till date have had slenderness ratio ranging between 1:8.5 to 1:12. One of our tallest buildings would probably have 1:11, 11.5, I think one of our most slender buildings that we have built. But these buildings have a slenderness ratios of exceeding 1:20, and sometimes it goes up to 1:25. And this, of course, has its own highly technological challenges. But these buildings tell you that if you have the power to dream, there is technology available to make it happen. These are some of the slides that I took out from the Center for Tall Building and Urban Habitat, which because that's one of those bodies which kind of categorize buildings, and they're keeping a record of the tallest and and they over a period of time keep publishing new charts and everything else for tall buildings. And it's a website that I think all of you should visit. They have criteria as to how you can apply your building there, and then I think there are about 14 or 18 of Indian buildings in that thing, which has got a record of all the tall buildings in the world. What is interesting is that they have now criteria for buildings which are joined. Earlier they didn't accept this, but now they are accepting it. And we've seen some of the buildings, and this is now becoming a trend as well, wherein you have towers and then they start joining them on the top because it gives them a kind of space at the terrace level itself. They have definitions for tall, super tall, and mega tall. So far in India, I think we've reached up to 250 to 280 meters. We have dreamt of 400 meters plus. It's still not happened. Then there is this concept of tall. Then there's this concept of super tall, which you've seen, which New York and is primarily leading the race in this one. And there is a mega tall, which is the 600 meter plus, which is I think about 4 buildings in the world currently, which are in that. These are the latest buildings out of 2019. We have Soho. This is the Zaha Hadid building, which is one of the highest atriums in the world. We have the other buildings out of China and one building out of New York, which are now currently in the top tallest buildings which have been built over the last 2 years. This is what they're predicting are the current trends. This is by Moshe Shavdi in Chongqing, where he is connected, and you must see this building. It's got some fantastic, it's corner of at the very tip of the building of the city, and they are surrounded by water on